So how many problems have I had in 90,000 miles? What were those problems? What were the costs associated? We're going to deal with that today. Hey guys, good morning. Welcome back to the channel. Yet another day of sun glare on my windshield. So today's video is being done by popular request. So ever since I've owned this car, I keep getting people that ask, oh, at your mileage, you know, what problems have you had? What does it cost you to maintain the car? And there are a few facets related to this. First being that it's a relatively early car, VIN number 9,300 and something. Number two, I drive a lot of miles. I'm not quite at 90,000 miles, but I'm getting close there. And I've done a number of videos recently of repairing certain things on the car, and that has inevitably I get a half a dozen people in the comment section saying, hey, what are the problems that you've had? What does the car cost to maintain and all of that? Well, this video is a sort of a placeholder video in anticipation of the 100,000 mile video that I have coming up in a few months. That will be a very comprehensive video. In fact, it might be a 2 or even 3 video series on everything related to 100,000 mile ownership of the car. But what I wanted to just go over today are the problems that I've had with the car and what costs have I incurred and that related to those problems. So to that end, we will start at the beginning. So I picked up the car, I believe it was in May of 2018, and it is now the end of September of 2020, so 2.5 years thereabouts. And shortly after I got the car, I got a fault code. I think it was within 2 weeks of ownership. I got a fault code, an error that came up on the screen that said charge door malfunction, charge port door malfunction. The car would still charge just fine, and the charge port door opened and closed just fine. Nevertheless, I was getting that error. So I contacted Tesla. It took like 3 weeks to schedule to get a mobile service tech to come out, and I did a video on that whole interchange and everything that was involved with it. But they sent out a mobile servicer, and he replaced the charge port door assembly, which sounds like a minor thing, but he showed up at like 5:30 in the afternoon, and he was, oh goodness, I think he was there till 8:30 that night. It took 2.5 or 3 hours to do the job. It was under warranty, so there were no costs incurred. I asked if I could keep the old charge port door, and he said no, being that it was under warranty. He said if I was the one paying the bill, they'd give it to me as an old part. But since the car was under warranty, Tesla required the part back, which that's reasonable, I understand. So that was item number one. And then the second issue that I had, and let me back up and say this, that the problems that I've had actually fall into two different categories. One would be hardware and the other would be software. And that's an important distinction to be made, because a Tesla is really a rolling computer. The primary difference between a Tesla and a normal car, and even a normal EV, we own 3 EVs. So the difference between our Tesla and our smart electric drive and our Mini Cooper electric is that those cars are mechanical automobiles that happen to have electric propulsion. A Tesla is a large amount of software and multiple computers that are mounted in an automotive chassis. And if you own a Tesla and another electric car, you'll know what I mean by that. So you really have to lump problems with Teslas into those 2 different categories. So the first one was that charge port door. Second issue that I had is I have had twice now, I've had software updates sort of break my car. And what I mean by that is not allow the car to be driven, which isn't really true. One of those software updates, the car would activate, but I had no power steering. I had no LTE connection. what else now? There were a bunch of, oh, the glove box door wouldn't open. There were just a bunch of things that wouldn't open in the car. That was a bad one because it was so stiff to turn the wheel. It's not just that I didn't have any power steering. It was as though the car was actively fighting my steering inputs. So, and what had to be done there is Tesla corporate had to go into my account and scrub that software update away from my car, write a patch, and then resubmit it. So that fixed the car, but for that day I used one of our other cars. That was probably the worst issue I had, just because it left the car unusable for that day. Thank God it happened in my driveway. Didn't have to be towed or anything. I had one other software issue that it appeared to be sort of a fatal issue, in the respect that I was driving the car. It was under warranty at the time. And in fact, I think this one occurred before the broken software update. But I was driving the car, and all of a sudden, boom, a thing came on that said 12 volt battery low. And no, I never replaced my 12 volt battery. I'll get to that in a second. But it said 12 volt battery low. And then I got another fault that came up that said system shutting down. And another one that came up that said, oh gosh, trying to think here. There were 4 or 5 errors that came up on the screen. And I pressed the thumb wheels to the car, and then the car stopped working. There was no accelerator pedal, stopped working. Luckily, I was on a side road and whatever. I pulled over to the side, and the hazards worked. Turned the hazards on. I pressed the thumb wheels to reset it, nothing. I pressed the brake pedal, held the thumb wheels in, and then the car, I got the car to come back up, the screen, but it wouldn't go into drive. So I called Tesla, and they said, well, we're in your car right now remotely, and they said, ooh, don't drive it. Don't drive it. Oh my gosh, you need to be towed in, and we think your main computer's bad. It was a big deal. It was a big deal. And I said, well, I'm like a half a block away from where I'm going. I could see the driveway, you know. And they said, I said, can you get it to, you know, move that distance? I'd hate to pay for a flatbed. And they said, well, you know, you shouldn't drive it. It won't activate, but you should, you know. Well, while I was on the phone with them, I asked them a bunch of questions, but they kept saying, don't drive it. It's a major problem. Don't drive it. And I said, well, don't send out a flatbed. If nothing else, I have towing insurance through my auto insurance. So I got off the phone with them, and I restarted it 5-6 times, and then it went into drive, but I still, boom, I had all these fault errors coming up on the screen. So I get to this customer's house. I do in-home appliance repair with my Model 3, pull in his driveway, got out of the car, and I had heard people say that if you do a hard restart, press your foot on the brake, hold the thumb wheels till it shuts down, get out of the car, walk away from it, the system will completely power down, and then when you go back in, it will have reset. So I went in the house, I did this service call, totally panic-stricken that I gotta have my car flatbedded from this guy's driveway. What am I gonna do about the rest of my work day and all that? Get out to the car, and it worked fine. I couldn't believe it. So my advice on that is, if you have some kind of a fatal error, do that. Hard restart the car, foot on the brake, hold your thumbs on the thumb wheels. When it powers down, get out of the car and walk away. Walk out of Bluetooth connection range with your cell phone and stay away from the car for 20 minutes or so, and then walk back to it. But that worked, and that reset the system. And now that was a weird one. So let's see here. The next issue that I had is an issue that continues to this day, and this sort of goes back to the charge port door, and that is that my charge port door is finicky. Now, I know people right now in the comment section are going to say, what about the little magnet in the charge port door? Yes, I've since lost the magnet in the charge port door, but that isn't related to this symptom, and that is just that my charge port door has always been intermittent to get it to open. I mean, it's, you know, I press the button. Usually the most reliable way for me to open my charge port door is pressing the button on the cord, the charge cord. So go up, press the button on the charge cord, and it will work reliably and awesome for a couple weeks. Then all of a sudden I have 3 or 4 days where it just doesn't want to open. A couple times I got annoyed, dug my fingers under it, pulled it open. And you're not going to hurt the door if you do that, by the way. There's a little ratcheting system in there that just, it kind of goes as you open the door, and you're not going to hurt it. But I've had to do that, I'd say 8 or 10 times in owning the car. It just wouldn't open. I'm pressing the button on the charge cord, I'm in the app with my phone, I'm in the car hitting the thing, it won't open. And and then the problem goes away. I've never been able to just tap the charge port door and have it open. And I know that's related to that, or I'm assuming it's related to that magnet in the door. That magnet in the door just recently fell off, but mine finally did fall off. But I've never been able to just tap my charge port door and have it open. Never worked for me. So that remains being finicky, and there are a number of people online that have had that issue. Usually it's not a problem, but it's a problem often enough that it's annoying. And that continues to this day, but that started early on. No, I didn't have Tesla addressed. They already put a charge port door in it. It was an inconvenient thing to deal with, you know, whatever. So, so that's that. That's, again, an ongoing issue with the car. Let's see here. What else? I've been run into a couple times. Now, this isn't a technical problem with the car, but I've been hit twice. Once was at the right rear corner. Somebody changed lanes into the rear of me, and another one was 6 days later. I was parked in a customer's driveway, and they went outside, got in their car, and backed into the nose of my car. Didn't look behind them. I was like, I pulled in, you knew I was in there. So that was kind of weird. They had a receiver hitch, so it nudged the nose of my car, so I had to have that fixed. Both items were fixed at the same time through different insurance companies. American Family for the nose, I think it was Allstate for the rear. At the same time, through the same auto repair shop, Custom Classics in Island Lake. Both repairs billed to different insurance companies. That was interesting. Let's see. I have had a driver's side upper control arm go bad. That was a noise I was getting from the car. I would decelerate, and the nose of the car would go down, and I'd get what sounded initially like a click, but it turns out it was a creaking sound, a very, very short duration creak sound. And then it eventually materialized where I would go over speed bumps or something that moved the car a lot, and I would get this sound coming from the driver's side upper control arm. By this point, the car was out of the bumper-to-bumper warranty, so I bought an upper control arm, $125, and I put it on myself. I did a video on that. So that was a $125 expense. The next issue that I had was the clunk coming from the rear of the car, where I would let off and then floor it, let off to regen, and floor it, and get a clunk coming from the rear, and that issue is still there. See if you can hear it here. I'm on regen, floor it. I get this boink sound from the rear. It has now been into 2 different Tesla stores. I was in at Tesla Highland Park, and they replaced a drive unit mount, a rubber isolator. And that rubber isolator, it was obviously bad. It was cracked, and the rubber was cracked. So they replaced it. They had to drop the entire drive unit with the cradle down, and pull that isolator out, press a new one in, put the drive unit back in the cradle, put the cradle and the whole drive unit back up in the car. It was just a little over $400, like $409 or something like that. Very reasonable, if you ask me, considering the work they had to do pulling that cradle down. That did not resolve the clunk. It's still there. They told me that the rear suspension knuckles were bad, which they were. They had play in the upper ball joints. So, but they wanted a lot to change those, and there's reasons for that. My car's been lowered an inch, so I've got T-Sport line lowering springs on it, and then I have staggered wheels. I've got this 20-inch aftermarket wheels at all 4 corners, but the rear wheels are 1.5 inches wider than stock. This is a rear-wheel drive car. You need all the help you can get on traction in the back there. So I've got wider wheels. Car's been lowered 1 inch, and the rear wheels are cambered in slightly. I do have adjustable camber arms for it, but for much of the life of the car, those camber arms weren't on there. So with the wheels cambered in, extra wide wheels with it lowered, it put a lot of stress on those upper ball links in the knuckles. So it's hard to say if that was a Tesla issue. I'd like to just put that on me, that it's the way I have the car configured that made those wear. So I bought those. Now, I bought those from a wrecked car through eBay because Tesla wanted, I think it was $325 per knuckle, so it would have been $650 plus tax, call it $700 for those, and I paid $190 for a pair off a low mileage wrecked Model 3 online, and did a video on replacing them. The clunk is still there. So then I brought it into Tesla of Schaumburg, and very nice people, great people at Highland Park, great people at Schaumburg. The only reason I tried a new Tesla store is that Highland Park was like, we can't figure this thing out, you know, but those knuckles are bad, and they wanted more to replace the knuckles than I was willing to put into it, considering the fact that I knew I had the capability of changing them myself. So I had Tesla of Schaumburg look at that clunk, and they called me in, and they had the car up on the lift, and they had a few ideas, but they couldn't track it down for a couple of reasons. One, well, I brought the car in. My main concern was, is it internal in the drive unit? Because if it's inside the drive unit, bad differential or something, that's still under warranty. The car had 82,000 miles or whatever at the time. I said it's got a 120,000 mile warranty on the drive unit. I want to know, is this problem internal within the drive unit or not? And so I think it was, the man's name was Mike from Tesla of Schaumburg, took me in back with the car on the lift. The guy was really cool, walked me around the bottom of the car, said, I don't think it's internal. He said, in fact, I'm positive it's not internal in your drive unit, and here's why. And he walked me through a bunch of stuff. He said, I believe it's peripheral. He said, I do hear the clunk, and he pointed out, he said, there's 3 of these rubber isolators that hold the drive unit to the cradle, the subframe, and then there are 4 isolators that isolate the subframe from the body of the car. He said there's also, it's a multi-link suspension system. There are 4 links, I believe, at each wheel, so with two pivots per link, so that's 8, that's 16, you know, potential points for play just at the suspension links. Then there are the 3 mounts, so you've got 16, 19, plus the 4 isolators that hold the cradle to the frame. That would make 23 separate like isolators, rubber isolators or whatever, in the rear of the car. And he said, honestly, he said, I'm almost wondering if it's not one thing, but if it's a cumulative effect. He said we wouldn't really know until we took the entire cradle down and the drive unit and just started either replacing one thing at a time, putting it back together and testing it each time, or just going through and replacing everything. So he shrugged his shoulders. He says, when does it do it? I said, only when I let off at about 35 miles an hour, so I've got full regen, and floor it quickly. If I let off, give it half throttle, it doesn't do it. Doesn't do it. Only when I do it full throttle. He said, is it getting worse? I said, no. I said, in fact, the only reason I found it is I was looking for it. I was, with my Ford C-Max Hybrid, I developed slop in the drive line in that car, and also the engine and drive unit mounts went bad. So I purposely did that to listen for it. He goes, so it never happens in normal daily use? I said, never. He goes, yeah, it was hard for us to get it to make the noise. He goes, Matt, he goes, honestly, I think you're a bit of a perfectionist and you're over stressing about it. He goes, you know what? He goes, if I were you, I would just ignore it. And he said, if the car starts driving weird, or if it happens more, if it becomes more prevalent, then you can address it. But he said, honestly, I don't think it's one thing. I think it's cumulative effect of a tiny bit of slop in a number of different places around that rear end of the car. He said it's peripheral, it's external of the drive unit. He said, honestly, Matt, I think you're looking for problems, is what it is. He said, I think it's fine. He said, I just want to put your nerves at ease. There's nothing functional wrong with the car, you know. So, like, all right, you know, so I think it's just a cumulative effect of a bunch of wear. As I own the car, maybe I'll go through and replace suspension parts one at a time. I don't know, but for now, that's that. He didn't charge me anything. Normally they get, I think, $83.50 or something like that to diagnose it. He goes, you know what, Matt? I'm not even going to diagnose it because you already paid Highland Park. They found a couple issues, but it wasn't the actual symptom you had. So he goes, I don't feel right charging you. And he did tell me, he said, also, you got aftermarket springs on it. He goes, to properly diagnose this, it'd probably be a good idea to put the stock springs back on, put it back to exactly the way it was. And I'm like, I get it. Yeah, I understand. So anyway, but he didn't charge me. So that was that. Let's see here. I had a rust spot in the driver's side fender up at the upper corner. The fender was mounted too close to the body, and where it was touching, the fender corner was touching the body, and as it would scoot around, it wore through the paint. They had the tiniest little rust spot there. And out of warranty, Tesla fixed it on their own tab. They said it was $1,500. They pulled the whole fender off the car and refinished the inside of that fender and the whole body panel of the car down to bare metal, fully refinished it. You can't tell, it looks perfect. And they shimmed the fender away from the body so that there's clearance there. So that's that. I have a couple minor alignment issues. Oh, I had a really tiny nick in the glass roof, and I've had a couple nicks in the windshield that have been nick repaired with that epoxy treatment. And then I've also had a whole new windshield installed. I had one large crack in the windshield. That was replaced by my auto insurance company. I had a $250 deductible, so I paid the auto insurance my $250 deductible. The windshield with labor was $1,020. So if I didn't have windshield insurance, it would have been $1,020. But again, I only paid the $250 for my insurance policy for that. And then going back to the glass roof, I had a nick in the glass roof, a tiny nick with then about a 6 or 7 millimeter long tiny crack coming off the side of it. And I called a windshield place, Model Y, blue Model Y. I believe it was Safe Light, and they came out and did that nick repair to the glass roof. And I have since been told by a bunch of people online, no windshield company will fix a glass roof ever. They only replace the panel, they'll never do it. The guy's like, dude, it's a windshield on the roof. It's 2 panes of glass with a laminated, two pieces of laminated of glass with that membrane in the center. It's a windshield on the roof. He goes, of course He goes, I've never done one, but I'll try it. He came out and fixed it. I mean, you could see where it once was, but so that was great. And my insurance company covered that for me at no charge. I have a ripple in the upholstery here on the armrest from putting my left elbow down there. And ironically, I put my right elbow here and there's no wrinkle or issue there, but there is on the armrest. I wouldn't call that a breakdown, but it's something that's wearing out. So the driver's seat had some wear on the stock upholstery. It was mainly on the side wing from climbing in and out of the car, as well as the headrest was showing some wear. Now, a little bit of that was on me as well because I was wearing my hat a lot, being follically challenged as I am in this glass roof. It's a little hot on my head. I mean, it is there's a thermal barrier there, but still it's a little bit of heat gets transferred through, and plus glare. So I would wear my hat, and the plastic buckle was actually gouging the vinyl on the headrest. So these Catskins upholstery kits are they're on all the seats throughout the car, and they're leather and much sturdier than the stock vinyl. So the cost of this interior typically would be $1,700 or $1,800. I got a discount on it through the Top Coverage, the company that did the work, because they knew I'd do a review on it. So thoroughly pleased with the interior, but again, that was more of an option. That was a choice that I had. That wasn't necessarily something that was necessary. So the next item was a very recent thing that I corrected, and I actually corrected this on my own, and that was the paint at the leading edge of the rocker panels, both driver and passenger side, that paint had gotten sort of blasted away just from road debris over the close to 90,000 miles I've owned the car. And now that, I got a quote on that, and it would have been about $1,000 to bring it in to a body shop and have the body shop take everything apart in that area, take it down to bare metal, prime it, paint blend it, you know, do all of that, and $800 to $1,000 depending on the number of hours and all that. And but instead I chose to correct it on my own. So I spent about 5 hours on it and took care of that on my own. Beyond that, I have an ongoing issue with this car where if I program my home address, it doesn't remember it. It will remember it until the car powers down. Also, recent addresses. There's something about my car that this happened shortly after I got the car, maybe a couple months in, that it stopped remembering my home address and stopped remembering recent addresses. So if I go into recent destinations, it just is empty. I tell it travel home, it forgets it. And Tesla has not been able to figure out why that is. They said it's beyond the scope of just, you know, some simple little software fix. They said it's something deep within the car. So, you know, honestly, it makes no difference. If I can't remember where I am as far as how to get out of that area to get home, I'll just tell it to navigate to and I'll just give it my address. So it's not a big deal. Recent addresses would be nice though, because there are occasions where I have to go back to a customer's home and I left the invoice. I stopped at my office, dropped the invoice off, then the customer calls later and says there's another issue and I don't have the invoice with me, and it would be nice to be able to page back through recent addresses. I'd say about once a week, that would be nice, but I can't do it. It just doesn't work in my car. So, so yeah, Teslas aren't perfect. Now that kind of ends my run of you know, problems with the car. I've done other work to the car that was purely elective. My swiveling screen mount kit that I manufacture, and you know, I put that in, and the carbon and leather steering wheel and the glossy carbon dash, you know, that stuff. My lowering, my wheels, my tint, that's all just, that was preference stuff. That wasn't anything wrong with the car. So, you know, it's an interesting thing. I have some parting comments, and that is that other cars that I've owned within this duration of time have needed a few things as well. So I don't want to make excuses. Yes, I've had some problems with the car. That being said, though, again, I go back to probably 50% of the issues I've had have been totally on me. Just, you know, modifications I've done to the car and that have affected the longevity of some of the factory components. So that I'm not going to blame Tesla for. And also, of the remaining issues, a couple of them were warranty, no problem. And what I did pay for out of pocket, even that was elective, really. The noise in the back was kind of elective. And again, the one Tesla store didn't charge me anything to look at that. So, yeah, so it's been... it's not been totally problem-free. So I'll leave it in your hands as far as what your thoughts are on whether or not, you know, this has been a reliable car or an unreliable car. I am not in any way scared to use it. You know, I'm not nervous. Oh my goodness, am I going to be left stranded or anything like that? Nothing like that. And I have owned cars like that. And the other cars I've owned have had similar things. We've had numerous recalls. Every single new car we've ever owned, we've had numerous recalls on, with the exception of our Mini Cooper. And actually our BMW hasn't, we haven't had to bring it in for recall. We did have a taillight, oh, actually both taillight modules went out. We were getting a fault code on the screen, and actually one of them has, it's a known issue with the M240i. So it's still under warranty, they'll be correcting that. But we haven't had any like safety recalls or anything on the BMW or the Mini Cooper. You know, German cars. I know most Tesla owners hate the fact that we have a couple German cars, but they've actually so far been the most reliable cars we've had. Then again, the Mini only has 6,000 miles on it. So, but I'll say that, again, the other cars that we've had that I've put this many miles on have had similar number of issues. My Ford C-Max Hybrid left me stranded twice with problems that, you know, electronic glitches that I had to correct. The car wouldn't activate. And so, you know, we've had other cars that have done similar things. So, I don't know, it's, I will say that this is the best car I've ever owned. It's my favorite car that I've ever owned. Our BMW is awesome, but this is electric. Mini Cooper is really awesome, but it's a shorter range car than this. And it was a cheaper car. It lacks a lot of the technology, but from a fun to drive standpoint and the instant torque and all that, that car's great. So, so that's my experience. I know this has been a lengthy video, but of a comprehensive list of every single problem I've ever had with the car, other than I did have one flat tire that I didn't have a pump with me at the time, and so my wife brought a tire plug kit and an air pump to me. But whatever, that's not a Tesla thing. That's just an automobile thing to have a flat tire. So, oh, I will also say that tires don't last as long on this car as other cars. Let me throw that in the mix as well. I had originally the stock 18-inch Aero wheels and tires, and though those tires were extremely efficient, after about 20,000 miles, there was a lot of tread wear. I mean, a lot of tread wear, and I wasn't driving the car hard. In fact, I was hypermiling it. But those tires really wore out quick. And with my Ford C-Max Hybrid, the factory tires gave me 93,000 miles. So I put the identical tires on it, another 93,000 miles. Now, it was a $1,000 set of tires, but still 93,000 miles. And they weren't even bald. They were just down to the wear indicators. Wasn't getting any feathering or cupping or any problems with those tires. But these, I think this car is heavy. Also this is just a rear-wheel drive car. All the acceleration and regen load is on the rear tires. So with the back when I could rotate the tires front to rear, before I had wider rear wheels and tires than I have now with the stock 18-inch Aeros, the rear tires wore out radically faster than the fronts, and so I was rotating them and I had to keep the wear more even. But the rear tires, I mean, they were wearing 3 times faster than the fronts. And again, I go back to, no, I wasn't sliding it around, nothing like that. Those people that know me know that I'm a hypermiler, especially when I'm during my work day and the car's full of equipment. You can't really hoon the thing around. So that's another thing. If you buy a Tesla, be ready to need tires periodically. But tires aren't, you know, they're not all that expensive, so not the end of the world. But anyway, that's it for me for today. Again, long video, but I've had this question so many times, so I wanted to go through it comprehensively. And the quick list was driver's side upper control arm, $125. Little over $400, I think it was $409 to do the drive unit isolator at the rear. And then I have about $40 out of pocket fixing the paint on the front. Now that would have been $800 to $1,000 to pay a body shop to do. So if you want to count that, $250 my deductible for the windshield. Nothing, no cost to fix the nick here, no cost to fix the charge port door, that was under warranty. The paint issue on the fender was no charge from Tesla. And the rear knuckles, you know, I spent $200 on those, changed those myself, but again, I go back to, that's on me. The interior upholstery stuff, that was a preference thing, so I don't know that I'd count that as an expense. So that's my list, and then some software glitches. So that's my list. If you guys have any questions, leave them in the comments section below. Would I buy the car again? Oh my gosh, absolutely. Absolutely, no question at all. I mean, this car, this is a very trustworthy car. I love it. Love it, love it, love it, love it, love it. I plan on keeping this car long term. I'd love to see 250,000 miles or higher out of it. So if you guys have any questions, give me the you know, hit me with them in the comments section below. Let me know your thoughts. And as always, stay charged. Thanks, guys. Bye-bye now.